Hi, welcome to LGHTBOB TV. Episode 1 on this beautiful Thursday, we're going to talk about design. Um, and what you have seen so far is that I am pretty emotional, and and I figure that lighting is the emotional part of architecture. Um, Although most people think um, it's treat or not think, but they treat it as decoration, and it comes at the end of the project. Lighting, sure, for me, um, has always been an intricate part of the design. Over the year, I work with many people, and it's funny how it's perceived by different people. Because, as an example, one architect I was working with was just telling me, "Well, all you do is put dots on paper," and that thought always stayed in my mind because although it is true, um, these dot transfer into uh, source to fixtures and then to a whole series of other technical characteristic that at the time I didn't need and I didn't feel to communicate with. So basically, I I told him, yeah, you're right. That's all I do, and I get paid for very well to do that. So now, when we start looking about how lighting evolve or how do we perceive lighting in the architecture, one of the things that I do is that I like to um, I like to think about what experience do I want the people in it to have. What is the outcome? Like, what's the memory, the last memory that they're gonna have, or what are they gonna remember when they get out of it? And it's funny because today, today when I decided, uh, the team and I was doing a little bit putting my notes together and organizing, I was like, Jesus, so far we talk about source, we talk about fixtures, and then we talk about also the manufacturers. And why do I bring design so late? Maybe I should have started with design. But for me, lighting is not decorating architecture. Lighting is to reveal. And this fundamental thought came when I first met Abe Fader. Uh, he 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 had a term called architecture revealment, and that's a word that he invented, and I always kind of live by that. And when I walk into a space, and when I look at some plans, because sometimes I don't have the chance to walk into the place, the first thing I get is a set of plan. um, I look, I put myself in a 3D space, and I say, okay, what's the feeling do I want? And that's how I start my story. What's this wall saying to this wall? What is the ceiling saying to the floor? What's the story of the architecture? Why do we have columns? Why do we have a pitch? Why do we have an angle? Why do we have this? And how can we enhance that story that the architect, the design team, the clients has and wants to communicate? So it always starts for me with what I see, the first thing, and how I'm gonna how my story is gonna start to bring it up. So most of the time, I get introduced to a project too late. Clients already, and this is very funny because when I arrive in Florida, I I 10 years ago I had retired from lighting. So there would be people would call me and say, "No, sorry, I don't travel, I don't do anything, I retired." And 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 then I got to meet with certain artists, and then I started going back into glass blowing, and I made a couple commission. I made a couple chandeliers. I made a couple art piece, and of course I integrate lighting. And people say, "Well, you should do." No, I didn't. I didn't feel like it was me. And although I really loved it, it was just, this is not the direction that I wanted to take. So, so, and then later I got introduced to. I met this client that not client, became a friend, that was had an audio video company, and then he said, well, we do lighting, and I was very surprised. I said, okay, well, tell me more about it. And then he said, well, that's very simple. Is that we go in, we count the amount of can, and we and and then I must have laughing. I said, okay, that's not lighting. Sorry. Uh, and then he said, okay, well, what do you think it is? So the mentality is very simple. Is you get the architect, you get the interior design, you get the fixtures, and then finally at the end you do the lighting, which is very, very difficult because you have to deal with what it is. And then what happened is that you are limited also by the lighting positioning, the outlet. Then you come to the client, you say, well, you're going to have to spend maybe 10, 15,000 in electrician because we need to rewire, or we need to add a few circuits, or we need to move the location of these lights there and this and that. And the client already been to this. I'm talking about residential here. The client had already been to that aggravation, so there's no way that he wants to do it. Not because he cannot afford it. It's just because now he's all settled in. His party date's already set. He knows when he's moving in. His new. So there is the whole um, a whole how could I say that? There's a whole hierarchy that have been done. Hierarchy, I don't know if this is the right word, but scheduling. There's a whole scheduling that has been done, and believe it or not, you're not part of it. But once they walk into the space, they said, "What about the lighting? Oh, let's call a lighting expert." That's the mentality, and that's what these audio video guys was telling me. And then as I learned to work with him, I realized that it was more true than ever. They received the package for the lighting at the end, and then the client, the designer, or the architect, or the interior decorator, or the building manager, condo developers, they say, okay, uh, please put the TV and the audio system and the security and the camera. Oh, and if you want to do, you can do the lighting too. And their operation is just, okay, well, there's 52 can, let's just replace it with insert that are dimmable, warm white, and call it a day. Well, that's a problem. But so now let's look at the proper way. And I said this is about residential because it is. In commercial, we have a different approach. In commercial, you are called by an architect. The architect says, well, you know what? We have all kinds of specialty. We have all kinds of new product this year. We have all kinds of finishes. We have all kinds of idea we would like to experiment, and our schedule is pretty tight. Why don't you come and work with us? And then they carve out a budget for lighting, and that's it. You fit in that budget, you're hired. And then you talk to the interior designers and you say, okay, what finish you planning to do and this and that, and then you coordinate with him. And then finally, the last is the material, the FF&E. So your overview of the project and the consequence of your design projections are far more they're far more there's more how can I say that? There's more reason that it will happen than if you're called at last, the last person, the last wheel of the barrel, or they say the last leg of the chair. So, so by knowing that, um, and it's funny that we are in 2026 and we still have to educate our client, but the market has shifted, and the audio video people have taken more and more the lighting. Even lighting manufacturers have special line of products for the audio video guy, and there's a very simple reason for that. The audio video guy is the one that's going to have to integrate it, to have it connect to the phone, to connect to the interface, integrate the control system, the alarm, the secure, the not the security, but the internet. All of that. He's in charge of the whole web of communication, and he's the interface. And depending what system that they use, Crestron, AMX, I don't even know if they still exist, but Control 4 and others, they'll be asked to control at some point the lights, and then they can. They replace some device, or they connect an interface into a DMX protocol, or they use their own little control or their own dimmers, and that's how it's happening. So of course, when you come as a lighting designers and you say, well, we have to make some hole in the ceiling, we have to, and by the way, there's also a very limited choice of fixtures, because in the plenum you only have 2-inch, and most of the fixtures are 4.5 inch, so they don't fit. So in the 2-inch area, here's the little range of fixtures that are going to fit there. Also, sometimes you'll see that the electrical layout is done. You have a 2-gang switch and that's all. Okay, so now what do we do? And I'm not even talking about the cosmetic part, because for me, and we'll see this later, cosmetic is a layer. It's not the main lighting sources. It's just a layer. So when you have people that say, yeah, but I paid $2,000 for this and $5,000 for that and $3,000, it's all good, and I'm very happy for you, but they don't contribute enough to your lighting existence. And believe it or not, this is not going to help. This is not going to help you. So again, when the lighting arrives late, it becomes more decoration than strategy. And you'll see that very often. The decorator comes in and says, oh, well, I'll sell you some lamps. Oh, we have some beautiful lamp floors. Come with me to the showroom. And they pick a bunch of decorative stuff. Works, doesn't work, they don't care. That's what it is. That's become the strategy, is that it's not about, it's nothing about your comfort. It's not about the design. It's not about anything that is pertinent to the utilization of the space, but it's a decorative element, and it does the job. And some architect, engineers, and interior decorator thinks that lighting is something that we can adjust later, and all this is based on confront. Already they have fought for their fee, they had fought for their design ideas, they're fighting for who's going to do the project in the office. I mean, there's a lot of exterior influence that they have in their environment, and you coming in is an additional one. And do they really want to fight with this? And do they really have the time for you? Not really. And I was telling you about engineers, and the beauty about engineers is that you can always count on an engineers to have the right illumination level. They're going to go into the IAS, the Illuminating Engineering Society reference, and they're going to say, okay, this is the level of light. And then they're going to call the manufacturer and they're going to say, give me something that I don't need too much, and I can just put them at 8 foot center, and I get a nice level of illumination. That's what our engineers do. They're really, really good at that. They can pump sheets like this because that's easy for them. They put it in their lighting calculation. They come in, they have a little, graphic that says that you have enough lighting, and that's it. They call it a day. And 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 what about the rest? Like, what about the and this is where I get again emotional. What about the feeling? What about the perception? What about the material? I mean, some materials are super, give you like infinite view, give you infinite designs, give you all kinds of perspective depending on which side you look at them, how they lit, etc., etc. But for certain people, that's not part of the program. The program is that I got to cover my butt. I signed the paper, and the paper says that I need 50-foot candle. Well, you're going to get 50-foot candle. That's it. So again, the feeling and the perception and all of that, it is part of, and sometimes not part of, how people feel in the space. Let's say you have a hospitality. Do you feel like mood driven? You want to stay in the lobby and have a drink and talk and even pull your laptop and do some work, or you just want to get in, get out. Like that's how it is. People that do residential. I mean, it's funny because um, sometimes people ask me, "What's the difference between this light that's $1,000 and this one that's $100?" And believe it or not, we have to answer that. And when you tell the person, well, it's also part of it's part of the brand. You have a $10 million house. If you put $100 lights, what kind of message are you giving? Most people that have $10 million house, they either buy a bigger one or they use it for investment. The next, when they put it for sale, it looks cheap. And then the person that buys use this as a leverage to negotiate and say, well, but look at this lighting, I'm going to have to change everything and blah, 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 blah. Anyway, so the perception of luxury when you do residential is very important because it or not. I mean, I did some very simple condos and we use $100 lights because that was what's needed. But again, you use $100 lights and you position them correctly, you have total different effect. You walk in two different condos in the same building, same amount of light, same budget. One I designed, the other one was done by the electrician. Two complete different feelings. So again, now let's say we're talking about retail. I did a lot of retail and I did a lot of restaurants, and I put them in both the same because it's showcasing, that you showcase, a meal, or you showcase a centerpiece, or you showcase a watch, or you showcase a Ferrari. It doesn't matter. You want the attention and 100% of it to the object. You want the attention on the beautiful meal. You want the attention on the beautiful centerpiece when you walk into that space, that restaurant. You want to buy that expensive jacket that you saw in the window because all the lights were on it, and that's all there was. So you walk in, you want to make sure that you look like that jacket belongs to you. Well, it does, but you want to make sure that you have that feeling that it's yours, you own it already. So again, different projects have different targets, and different targets have different means to get there. But again, it's not the architect. Well, the architect will have built a beautiful shell. The designer will have, selected, and God forbid. I used to be a teacher, a director of a design school, and we were. I was the director of an interior design school, and I have more than respect than anybody else for interior designers. because they get bombarded by ideas, by anything, and the kitchen sink comes to them. And they have to plan for trends, they have to plan for expansion, they have to plan that by the time the project is finished, the client is still happy and hasn't changed 25 times his idea 25 times, which he will. So again, the interior designers are not only bombarded by suppliers, they also bombarded with the client, because the client, all they do is they take a picture, and these day and age, they do a screenshot and send it and said, I like this. What do you like? I like that wall. Yeah, but that wall is 75 foot tall and your condo is 10 feet. Yeah, but I want this. Yeah, but what do you like about it? The color, the texture, or the effect? Because those are three different things. And depending on the height of your ceiling, you'll have three different effects. So they constantly have to justify their design direction and their design. So imagine dealing with lighting. No way. They don't have they have a very, very minimal. But at the end, when client walks in and it said, well, this looks flat. Of course it looks flat, because you didn't bring somebody that could work with the team and enhance them and elevate their work so that the project gets the proper treatment. So of course, residential, commercial, industrial, even industrial. I was about 30 years old. I got invited in Italy to a lighting manufacturer, and I was stunned, because before you walk into the facility, you already were walking into the experience. They were doing all kinds of art installation, and they were lighting them up. And even if it was daylight, you could imagine that what would happen at night. And the visit was at 4 o'clock. So I got to witness the production when people went home. Then we went back to the meeting room, and then we had a dinner. And when we walk out, it was dark, and everything that I could imagine was even better. So because lighting happened at night, uh, it was just phenomenal. So again, the the point is that if you anticipate the experience from before you get in, what experience that you're going to bring, most of the time, 90% of the time, you can be on time, and you can help the architecture to be redefined, the interior design maybe to alternate their pattern or change the finishes, uh, uh, have different architectural element, add or retract or relocate because of the lighting effect. So it becomes a whole symphony of of coordination and also collaboration. So yes, this brings me to lighting layers. Um, it's funny because I come from the theater world. I learned lighting in a theater, and in a theater, each light has a dimmer. And and I learned lighting in a high school theater, and we had limited resource, but I had really, really good teachers. And in between the different act, we would go on a ladder, and we had marked our fixtures with different angles and different directions, and the same light for the first act was refocused for act 2 and act 3. And that always gave me that way of thinking about lighting, and put different layers. because depending on what time of the day or what event you're having, you may want to have a different lighting setup. And by having different layers, well, guess what? You are absolutely in control to do that. You can add, you can subtract, you can elongate, you can make it intimate, you can color, you can, I mean, there's infinite amount of possibility because you have create this matrix of lighting effects, and that gives you the flexibility when you program your switch, that certain thing happen just with the press of one button. So talking about layers, the first layers I always do is it's first is general lighting. So we make sure that there's light everywhere. Nobody kicks their knee or their toe on furniture or so forth. And also you have a pad for cleaning. Um, and this will give you general visibility, will give you ambient lighting in the environment, and sometimes what we do with these control system is that some of those layers are on the main button. So let's say you have a guest, they're not used with your lighting layout and lighting system. When they press that button, there's general lighting, right? Then they press the other one, then we have the good afternoon. Then you have dinner scene, then you have late or good night scene. So first general lighting, then we second layers, I tend to have accent lighting. So I will have directional lighting on arts, on sculpture, maybe architectural feature, and some will be narrow, some will be general diffuse. This is the accent. Even a general diffuse, inside of a nicho will give you a beautiful shadow, if you have a sculpture, to have a nice general diffuse. So again, the accent light is very important. Today, in today's world, we most of us work from home. We have laptops. Anyway, I think I have a laptop in my kitchen. I have one in my bedroom. I mean, and that I do research or that I do reading, or I have tablets, and my son has a tablet. So a lot of work is done at home, or if we're doing commercial, we're gonna have these layers of task lighting. What are we doing? Do we want to read? Do we doing work at the desk? Do we doing cooking? Doing whatever work or task that we're doing? Well, we're going to need some light there, right? And this is also something that sometimes is forgotten. um, I design, normally I have task lighting in the bedroom for each side of the bed. Why? Because people, like to read, or they want to talk about something and so forth. So they do have a switch and a separate light. And also, although I really love table lamp, sometimes there's no space for it. So to have a nice little direct light on each side of the bed does the job. And then most of the time, I will also have what I call a perimeter lighting, meaning everything around. And there's a few reasons. First, it defines the space, it expands the perception of the space. Um, about 30 years ago, uh, I I was experimenting perimeter lighting, and I was doing wall cove and floor cove, and at that a specific time of the day, right in the afternoon, where the sky was about 4,000, and at the time that's all I had, 12-inch LED strip that were 4,000. You were looking at the window, and it seemed like the wall were floating outside. it was such a beautiful picture, and the effect was just phenomenal because you had the detachment of the floor and the ceiling, and you had that piece of wall that was, and you had the window matching the color of the lighting. It was just phenomenal. Anyway, so perimeter lighting gives you that effect and that possibility. Now, when you're doing commercial, you can do one side, you can do the others, you can do ceiling, floor, you can do walls. I mean, perimeter is talk by itself. And what are these four? And and then after that, it's up to you. I mean, if you want to have another layer for whatever, right? If you have lighting effect, if you have, I don't know, you could have whatever. But having these four layers to start, what gives you is that it starts to build your matrix of lighting layers, and then what effect you want by picking them up. So again, it gives you a flexibility when you start to control and you start to program. And this is for me a simple way. And when we do residential, it's very hard to, and you come at the last minute. It's very hard to explain to a client what you're going to do, um, because there's not much choice you can do. You can do the recess and the decorative. I mean, you can have some smart plugs which control lamps. I mean, you can go there. Now we have some module that we can insert in the fixtures, and then they can become smart fixtures. I mean, there is some second afterthoughts solution, remodeling solution, but the best is always to plan it for. So um, now people will always tell me, Bob, but we don't have the money for that. And budget is uh, my number one thing that I don't care about when I design, because if I start to worry about the design from a budget point of view, I'll never do anything I want. But if I start to put the ideas and the hierarchy and everything that I need, and I start exploring what I start putting amount of dollars that or percentage of importance, then I can allow different dollars to it. Does that, you following me? I put all my effects, everything I want, my layers, and then I said, okay, this is 10%, this is 20%, this is 40%. So now we're at 70, the rest is 70%. So now we have 100%. So in my budget, let's say I have $10,000, then I go my 10, 20, 30, 30. That's it. And then that will help me to realize, hey, I can do this and I can do that, and keep in mind that I have I can what I'm building is layers. So yes, I may put six downlights or six directional in one area, and by themselves they don't produce enough light. But when you have my four layers together, you do have enough light. Make sense? So that's the story I come with, and I always try to put that into, yeah, the, a story. Like, I'm really good at creating story, and it's funny because talking about story, I looked at my previous video, my three previous day. Today I'm standing up. Yesterday I was sitting. When I sit, I have a tendency to put my finger in my mouth, uh, and also certain subjects I'm better than others. So again, I thank you a lot for encouraging me and enduring me. And I can guarantee you that it will get better. I take notes, and I make sure that I can make it. So now um, let's talk about transformation here. So before, I used to talk about fixture in the ceiling. Now I tell my clients that we're gonna treat this as a spatial narrative. So they're like, what? Yeah, this is not about the fixture, it's about the space. What do we want that space? And of course, there's going to be fixtures on the ceiling. There's going to be some perimeter lighting. There's going to be all kinds of things. But just before changing the narrative, it helps me to bring the story a different angle. And most important is that it helped me to communicate to the client the story they want to hear. And then they appropriate themselves the story, and then nobody can argue with them because it's their story. So basically, I'm an interface to from their thoughts, from the architecture, from the design, from the house, to create a story that I deliver to the client in their words, and then I keep bringing it up back, and they say, "This is it. This is it. This is it. This is it." So that way, I don't have to deal with trying to explain myself. I would walk into a place and they said, "Oh yeah, this is the morning sunset," and "Oh yeah, this is where we're gonna have this, and this is where we're gonna have that," and I would listen to them and I say, "Wow, I could have done a better job," because once they sell themselves and they understand, then my job is to make sure that I deliver. And when somebody in the team, the electrician, the control people, it could be anybody, fire, I mean, the fire sprinkler or the HVAC guy. And I tell them, I said, listen, this is very, very important that we do this way, because that's the story. And if they don't want to understand, I turn to my client and I say, listen, that morning, sunset, sunrise, it's not going to happen because we have ducks. They may pay a fortune for the AC system, but I can guarantee you that these ducks are going to move. They're going to move. And especially if I told a guy to move them and they didn't want to move it, well, now the owner is going to tell them. So that's how I get by, and that's how also I help to keep the integrity of my design. Commercial is the worst, because people don't talk to each other, and it's very rare that you're gonna have the everybody at the same time, except at the end. And at the end, it's a mess. Everybody's running, and they know that if they don't finish, they're gonna get penalty and this and that. So, but residential, we have a little runway, and again, it for me, it all goes back to lighting is revealing the architecture. And again, I was talking to an HVAC guy, and I was thanking him because I told him to move some vent because I had some recess, and I said, listen, like we're building a magazine house here, and do you want your name to be associated with that? And he got it. He says, absolutely. A couple of weeks later, out of the blue, I get this call, and it's the plumber. And he's like, Bob, I talked to the AC guy, and he told me this and that and this, and what do you think we should do? I was stunned. I said, okay, I'm on my way. And I just went, and we had a little conversation and fixed it. So again, communication. Um, when when you're doing a low amount of projects, it's very easy to have this intimate connection with your clients. When you start having, again, 5, 6, 10 projects, uh, and then you have different project managers, you have different contractors, you have it becomes a juggling act, and I like to call it a circus, but and it's a degrade for the circus, but it is becoming very hard to manage all this these design ideas and integrity into one direction. I mean, you talk to the developers, they're in the same situation. They're running 5 buildings simultaneously. Uh, and every one of their project is different. Every one of them has a different lighting designer, or they have a different design team, or different architect, or they have one architect and that's it. Like, and they don't do nothing. They stop everything. So that's another thing that sometimes gets me, is that you're in full production, full go mode, and then you know, hurry up and wait. Oh, send me the quote now. And then 3 weeks later, oh yeah, let's go. What do you mean, let's go? It's been 3 weeks. That has consequence for me, for everybody else. Like, you asked me if we could do this. I called the people. They said yes, and you waited 3 weeks. They're somewhere else. Sorry. Or the material that I needed, the manufacturer need to do this project, because I called them up and I said, hey, I have a project. I need that many recessed light for a commercial job. Well, guess what? Half of them are gone. So now, and all those consequences you can avoid if you communicate. So uh, by having poor experience, you create all this backlog, and sometimes self-importance. You're because you want to show your clients that you're somebody that can lead. uh, that will create inconsistency. It would create expensive correction, etc., etc. And again, it's not because the people are wrong, or because you're better than anybody else. It's just life continue, and ideally, it's a moving train. Everybody's in it, and let's just get at it. And and as a designer, when I wear my designer hat for that little brief, this is what I try to communicate to my clients. I mean, that I do more than I'm supposed to, because I know the consequence of not doing it, and then I'll be the one that's going to be blamed. So that's one thing that I'm very, very not interested in. Um, and it happened to me. So, and I'm sure most of you had that experience too. One of the hard thing is walking into a project and they say, well, the lighting is already locked. It's already done. We don't need you. But we have this. And then you look at the problem they have, and you can reverse engineering and see, oh, I understand why they have that problem. Again, leadership, very important, and overview. Um, I made a really good career in repairing other people's mistake. And at some point in my career, I used to market myself as the last minute guy. If you're at the last hour and you have a problem, I'll fix it. And one of the reason why is because, first of all, money is not an object, and second is that there's that time period that I told you that it kills everything. When you have a deadline and you have no choice, well, guess what? There's no, oh yes, but no, maybe let's look around. Oh, let's Google it. No, it's like get it done. And I was very, very appreciated because I could deliver. Anywhere I would go, I could find local shops to do me custom work, to do glass work, to do anything I needed to fill out that request. Could have been a custom luminaire. It could have been, sometimes it was a whole retrofit. I walk into a job and all the LED inside the fixtures were the wrong colors. I had to retrofit all those. I mean, and hired by the manufacturers. I did what I had to do, and they said, Bob, we don't want to have a lawsuit. We don't want to lose the client, and most of all, we don't want to miss the deadline because everything was installed. And somebody along the line that was not a lighting designer forgot to look at the color temperature of the source. So again, it will. How could I say that? It will happens to you, and uh, it's just part of life. So on that, I have so much more to talk about, and as you can see, I get carried away. I love it. I get excited. But let's keep some stuff for next week. And thank you for being there. Thank you for evolving with me in this experience. And I, my only promise to you is that I'm going to make it better, and try to communicate better. And if you have any questions or anything, you can reach out to me on my LinkedIn. I'm 24/7, not 24/7, I lie, but I can answer pretty quickly. And on that, so have a beautiful day and thank you for being there. Tomorrow we're going to talk about the industry of lighting, because I think it's very important that we understand what is surrounding this industry and why certain decisions are made, and why and how they're made and where you can be part of it at different level. So thank you again. And